All right, so I hope everybody is doing well. I don't really have anything new to share as of today. As far as I know, it does look like the app should open up on Monday for everybody to start submitting their applications. We will have our RFA office hour. Actually, I'm sorry, our RFA application, EGAP application portal training, on Monday from 2 to 4. Of course, we may go past 4 if we need to, but that is the plan for now. Trying to think if there's anything else that I need to let you know about, but I can't really think of anything at this moment. So I'm going to go ahead and open up. I'm going to go ahead and open up the chat for anybody who has any questions about the grant as they're getting ready to submit their applications. Okay, so while we're waiting for questions to be asked, I can think of one that was asked during the week. I'm sorry, I do have a reminder now that I think about it. You should have gotten an email. If you're part of our listserv, you should have gotten an email, I think yesterday, or it was either sent out Monday or yesterday. I'm sorry, the whole week has been a blur. From Erica Rucker from TPI, with information about EGAP, and included in that email was a link for you to get an account in EGAP if you do not already have one. So let me just briefly talk about that for just a moment. If you've never applied for a 21st Century grant before and you are not from an LEA, then you may need access to EGAP. You may not have ever had an account created for you in EGAP. And so a link to it's a form, basically like a Google form, but it's not Google, has been created to collect the information that we need here at the State Department in order to create an account for you. One of the things that it does ask you for is your Alabama Buys vendor number. Alabama Buys used to be called STARS, and so if you have a STARS, if you have a STARS vendor number, it should still be the same as the Alabama Buys number. It's just the whole system was updated and it was changed to Alabama Buys. But I would think that that vendor number should be the same as it was before, but you may just want to check and verify that. You don't have to have that when you submit that form. We don't have to have it in order to create an account for you in EGAP, but we do have to have it in order for us to give you funding. So it's something that we need as soon as possible from you if you don't already have it. If you are applying for a grant and you've never become a vendor in the STARS or the Alabama Buys system, then that is something that you need to do as soon as possible. You can Google Alabama Buys and it should take you to the website. There's instructions on the website of how to get an account. But if you have problems with that, then you're welcome to reach out. I can send you specific instructions on how to join Alabama Buys. It is kind of a lengthy process, and so it's something that you would need to do, as quickly as possible to get that started. But anyway, if you're unsure how to do that, please don't hesitate to reach out and we can send you that information. Okay, so there's a question here that says, can you explain how we will braid our grant to include summer literacy and math camps? Sure. So I actually have a presentation. Let me see if I can access it real quick. To kind of show you an example of how this could be done. Give me just 1 second. I am not working in the office today. I have been in another training all day and just got finished presenting here about that very same thing, but it wasn't from my computer. So let me just make sure I can access this. Give me just 1 second. I'm trying to remember where I've saved it to. Oh, actually, I think I have it pulled up. Maybe I don't. No. Oh, I did. Okay, give me just a second. Um, Sorry. Just a moment. I don't know if you guys are like me, but I have a bazillion folders, and sometimes I have to remember where I put things. Okay, here we go. Sorry, it's opening. All right. I am going to share my screen. Okay. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go over to that PowerPoint, and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger and just, well, no, I thought I was going to do that, but I guess evidently I can't do that. But I'm going to scroll down and show you this example. Let me see if I can make it bigger. Okay, hopefully you guys can see this. So this is an example summer schedule that was sent to me by one of our 21st century sites from last year who was able to braid funds in order, to braid their 21st century funds and their funds from the Office of Math Improvement and ARI to meet the needs of those two sections, serve those kids, but also include them in their 21st century program. So if you notice here, I'm going to try to do this quickly because I'm sure there's lots of people with questions today. If you notice here, this goes through kindergarten through 5th grade. So each column represents a different grade level. And items here, if they're on the left side of that column, they were funded by 21st century. And if they're pink or on the right side, they were funded by either the Office of Math Instruction or ARI, Alabama Reading Initiative. Items that are color-coded in blue is something that occurred. Let me hide this. Sorry. Items that were highlighted in blue or were math and literacy classes or sessions that they had with all students. And then items that are yellow were enrichment activities for all students. The pink items are the tiered math or literacy instruction that was funded by either the reading or the math initiative. And then the items that are green are enrichment activities for the students who are not participating in that tiered instruction. So let's just look at one grade level really quickly. This is for the beginning of the day. This is for the morning. So let's just look at 3rd grade. So so from 7:45 to 8, they come in and have breakfast. All the kids have breakfast. Then they do a health and fitness activity with all of the students. Then after that, they did an ELA whole group activity. So this would be some sort of literacy activity, but it's not the tiered instruction required by the Alabama Reading Initiative. This is just something they do with all the kids, something that incorporates English language arts. Okay, they do that for 30 minutes. Then all the kids move into a music or art activity. And this particular program said it will be vocabulary focused. So while they're doing their music or art lessons, they're also going to be mindful about talking about the different vocabulary words that they're using as they're doing those activities. Then for the next hour, the children that have to receive that ELA small group instruction will go to one place and do their Tier 2 iReady activity that's required by the Alabama Reading Initiative. And the students who are not supposed to participate that will go to another location and do an enrichment activity. It could be they're all doing the same thing. It could be they're splitting apart and some kids are doing karate and some kids are doing a tennis activity, and some kids may be doing dance, or some kids may be doing robotics, or some, just something outside, some sort of enrichment activity. All right, and then as we move through the day, this is the afternoon. So in the afternoon, we're right here in this this column here. They all come back together. All the kids in the program come back together and do some sort of nutrition activity for 20 minutes. And again, they focus on vocabulary while they're doing that. And then they go to lunch. The lunch will be provided by the C&P program. That's another way to braid in some funding from another state initiative, is working with C&P to provide that lunch. If you don't know what C&P is, it's Child Nutrition Program through the state. And then after lunch, all the kids go into some sort of STEM or robotics. So they do their robotics on Wednesdays, and then all the other days of the week, they do a STEM activity. Then the next activity they all go into is they do a math by the book program. But then over here it says one day a week they do a reader's theater. So this particular program, I think, did a play. And so they worked on getting ready for that play one day a week. The other days they would spend 30 minutes doing math by the book, which is just a math program. And then they would spend the next 30 minutes doing an ELA whole group book study of some sorts. And it says question mark here, so they could have done something else. But this is all activities that all the kids are doing together. Then they would split apart again, and the children who were supposed to be in that ELA small group instruction mandated by ARI would go to one place and do that, while the other 21st century students would go to some sort of enrichment activity again. It could be the same as what was going on in the morning. It could be something totally different. And then at the end of the day, they all come back together and do character education activity, and then they ended their day at 2 o'clock for this particular schedule. So that's just one example of how this could be done. You would just plan out how you're going to incorporate those required reading and math activities into your program, and then fill in the rest of your day with your enrichment activities, your fun activities, but then also making sure that you are doing some sort of English language arts or math activities with your other students as well, because we want to make sure that our program benefits the academic achievement of all kids, not just the ones who need that special remediation, but then also all the kids, including those that have that special, that are part of that special remediation, are also getting to do some fun things too. This particular program incorporated a lot of math and English language arts. They didn't have to do that. They could have incorporated more enrichment that the kids that have to do the tiered activities, they could have included, more individualized enrichment for them if they wanted to. You can do it however you need to do it. And thinking about funding, just to let you know, these activities that are highlighted in pink, those would be paid for by either OMI or ELA, or the Reading Initiative, or your I think it's called your AMSTEC funds, your math funds. So, for example, if you're doing ELA activities, your ARI funding, your Alabama Literacy Act funding, could go towards paying a highly qualified literacy teacher to teach these courses. It could go towards paying for the iReady, for the activities, for any kind of manipulatives that you have to buy that goes with that. But then you can use your 21st century funds for all of these other, your health and fitness, your STEM robotics, your other ELA or math programs that are outside of the mandated programs by ARI. Same thing over here with the math. They did math in 4th and 5th grade. Those math activities could be paid for by the Numeracy Act funds. The teacher could be paid for with them, as well as the materials and supplies. And then again, you could use 21st century to pay for everything else. If you had extra ARI or OMI funds after you've paid for the enrichment, then those could go towards other things that are approved by the grant. For example, transportation can be paid for with those funds for the program. So you may pay a portion of transportation with 21st Century funds and pay a portion of transportation with those OMI funds. So that's kind of how this could look. Hopefully that's helpful to you guys. So let me get out of this and see what other questions have popped up. Hopefully that helped. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Okay, let me see what else we have. Okay, so it says, I understand that there is a 12-to-1 ratio for students to teachers. Are we allowed to hire teacher aides? If we are, would teacher aides be counted as teachers according to that ratio stipulation? If so, is it permissible to hire them at a lesser rate of pay than a teacher? So the RFA suggests having a 12-to-1 ratio. It's not a requirement. It is a suggestion. So what that means is we suggest that you have a teacher for every 12 students, but you don't have to. And yes, you can have teacher aides that could help with that situation. And yes, your teacher aides could definitely be paid at a lesser rate than your regular teachers. So that would be perfectly fine. Okay, next question. Will the federal funding pause impact this grant? And can I email us this PowerPoint? The grant funding PowerPoint. I can see if we can I'll send that PowerPoint to Erica with TPI and see if we can get that sent out. Erica, you may have to remind me on that one because I'm gonna have to hit the road as soon as I get done with this meeting. But I'll try to get that out to everyone. As far as the federal funding pause goes, it should not affect this grant as far as we know at this time. I did get word from my boss probably about 30 minutes ago that there is an article out that says that the freeze has been rescinded. So it may not be an issue anyway. But if it comes back or if that was incorrect, then our plan is just to continue with the grant and continue with funding, continue with getting ready for this grant and going as though nothing is going to affect it until we hear otherwise from the federal government. So I don't think it's going to be an issue, but we will let you guys know if we find out anything different in the future. All right, Cherokee County intends to provide transportation for summer program only, not during the school year program. Will we request the full transportation supplement of $10,000 or a reduced amount? So that's a great question. We only have the supplement. You have two choices. You have the $10,000 or the $20,000. I did consider doing two separate ones, one for summer and one for the school year, but we ended up not doing that. So you can request the full transportation, even if you're only planning on providing that transportation during either the summer or the school year. So that is fine. I think I've mentioned this in other RFA office hours, but as long as you do what you say you're going to do in the grant, you provide the transportation you say you're going to provide to get those funds. If you don't need the entire $10,000 just for summer transportation, you can use those funds for other things, just as long as, again, as you're doing what you said you were going to do in your grant application. All right. As it pertains to developing the program objectives, are there stipulations regarding using validated surveys to collect evidence? For example, if there is a survey assessment that measures physical activity habits that has been validated in research as acceptable to use with children, can we use that to collect data from children? Yes, that's fine. There is not any kind of stipulations in the grant as to exactly what surveys. I'm assuming you're talking about the surveys that you're supposed to do. So when you're gathering when you're doing your needs assessment and figuring out what the needs of the students are, there isn't any kind of template or specified survey that you have to give out. You can create your own, or you can use one, like you say, that's already been developed and that's research acceptable. So that is fine. You can use whatever you see fit for that. There's not any kind of specific regulations for that. All right. What other questions may you guys have? Might you guys have? Okay, is the cost center a number? That's the next question that just popped up. Yes, if you are an LEA, you should have had a cost center assigned to you. There is a number that you should have. If you don't know what it is, then you need to contact your accounting department or your CSFO. They should know what your cost center number is. If you are I'll have to check into this, but if you're a community-based organization or a faith-based organization, it may be that we have to assign a cost center number to you. So if that's the case, then I will need to check in. Let me make a note to check into that. Or Alicia, if you know and can chime in. You may not, I'm not sure. But I believe it is a number. Yeah, go ahead.
You're correct. They would have to complete some kind of paperwork, but it will come through us to get it assigned for non-LEAs.
Okay, perfect. So more than likely, if you need a cost number, you're also going to need an account in EGAP, and so we will know that if you've gone in and filled out that form asking for an account to be created for a new entity, then we need to check into getting you also a cost center number as well. I believe that's probably, it asks for the vendor number for Alabama Buys and your, I always want to say the wrong thing, your EUI number. I know I'm saying that wrong, but it's in the form. Your individual entity number, I think is what it is. Or, unique entity number, that's what it is. So it's UEN number. You'll need to provide that also. So I believe those two items are used to create your cost center. All right. Is the $10,000 for being a Title V school tied to transportation? Okay, so yes, it is. So if you, it is tied to transportation. So there's two different transportation allocations. You've got the regular transportation allocation that's for anyone who is providing transportation to their students for either the after-school program or the summer program. Then if you are considered a rural or you're serving a school that is considered rural, then you can get an additional $10,000 for that. And so if the school qualifies for Title V funds or REAP funds that you're serving, then you would mark that they are considered rural and you would qualify for the additional $10,000 for transportation. So you could get a total of $20,000 for transportation. What are the requirements for providing services when there is a private school in the district? So if there is a private school in the district, the requirement is for that community center to reach out to those private schools and offer them services or offer them the ability to participate in the after-school program. If you're an LEA, then you already send out intent to participate forms every spring to the private schools in your area and let them know what title services are available to them. And you would just need to make sure that 21st Century is listed there. Also, as you're applying for this, you need to reach out to them now and see if that's something they are interested in. If you're not an LEA and you're a CBO or an FBO, maybe you are a private school, that's applying for the grant. If there are other private schools that are nearby that are in the attendance area of the public schools you plan to serve, you would also need to reach out to them and see if they have children that would want to participate in that program. Also, technically, just throwing this out there, if you ever have a homeschool parent that reaches out to you and wants the child to come and participate, that you're supposed to allow that as well, as long as long as you have room in your program. But if it's the beginning of the program and it hasn't started yet, and you let's say that you can only serve 200 kids, then you have to have an equitable way to provide those services to both the public and the private school and technically homeschool students. So you would need to create some sort of application that they would fill out to come and join the program. You could have some sort of stipulations in the application as to who gets first priority to join that, but that first priority can't be the public school kids get priority over the private. That can't be a priority. It needs to be something like kids who are failing in math, or kids who are who are low performing in English, or something like that. Or you could say first come, first serve. The first 200 kids who submit an application will be the ones that get to fill the seats. And then after that, you could have a waiting list. But you have to offer those services in an equitable manner to both the public and the private school kids. All right. In component 3B, where we are required to cite our sources and research, if we are stating a strategy for multiple objectives, do we have to cite and list the research each time it is used? No, I would not think so. So I think if I'm reading this question right, there is a certain resource that you want to use, and you can actually meet multiple objectives with that resource. So I would believe that you would just need to discuss the research behind that resource just the one time. You wouldn't have to do it every single time that it's mentioned. We are reapplying for the grant and we are in EGAP. We will automatically be able to go into our EGAP and be able to access the application. We have sent in an intent to apply, but would like to make sure we will have access. Yes. So once the application becomes available, anybody who has an EGAP account should be able to see it. So hopefully when you get to work on Monday morning, you'll be able to sign into EGAP and see the application. So you'll go in just like you normally would to look at any other, like to look at your consolidated grant or to start any other grant. And it will be listed. Oh, that is something else I need to talk to you guys about. That it was sent out in the email that I mentioned earlier, that Erica sent out earlier this week regarding the EGAP. So there's actually going to be 2 EGAP applications for 21st Century that will be new on Monday. When we created the Cohort 26 RFA, or when I, put it into place, we knew that we wanted to be able to serve schools who wanted to do summer programs this coming summer. And we also knew that there would be probably a lot of interest from LEAs and programs who only wanted to do a summer program, so that because they have to do those English and math literacy, the ELA and the OMI literacy and math camps during the summer, we knew that there was going to be a big push for that. And we knew that last year, those same people were able to use ESSER funds to help supplement those camps and make them nice and robust. But now those funds are gone. And so in order for us to do that, in order for us to be able to provide funding for the summer, we actually have to pull that funding from FY for fiscal year 25, which is our current fiscal year. EGAP is also tied to accounting. And so when I spoke with accounting, first of all, I didn't realize we were going to need to do 2 different applications. They're going to look exactly the same. But, I'm learning. I'm constantly learning something new every day. But when I spoke with accounting, they said that since we have decided to start naming our cohorts after the year that the grant starts. They really wanted us to, they thought that was a great idea and be very helpful. But because the summer only programs are actually technically going to start in FY25, we need to call it Cohort 25 Summer. So if you are applying for a summer only grant, that means that for the next 5 summers, starting this coming summer, and for the next 4 summers after, and that's all you plan to do, then you will fill out the EGAP application that's going to be called I think it's going to be 21st Century dash Cohort 25 dash Summer. That will be the one that you fill out. If you are doing a year-long program, which means that you'll actually start your program this coming fall and then do a summer program the next summer, or if you're just doing an academic year only program and not having a summer program, then you're going to fill out the EGAP application that's titled 21st Century Cohort 26. Just keep in mind that even though Cohort 25 Summer is called that, you will still follow the rules and regulations of the Cohort 26 RFA. It mentions the summer program in there. It's just we didn't realize that we were going to need to call it a separate thing. So that's what you'll need to look for when you go in. But it should be there on Monday morning when you get to work, if everything continues to go well. Okay. As it pertains to transportation, does it have to be a private service company? No, it absolutely not. As a matter of fact, most of our current 21st Century Grant programs, if they're providing daily transportation to students, then typically they contract with the LEA to have school buses do that. So if you're an LEA, you already have access to those, and you would just need to, you could use 21st Century funds to pay the bus drivers and to pay for gas and mileage and that sort of thing. And if you're a CBO or a FBO or any other kind of private organization, then we would highly recommend that you reach out to the LEA that you're going to be working with and contract with them to provide those services. Now, for things like field trips and that sort of thing, you definitely can contract with a private service company, Greyhound type bus, to provide those sort of things. But I have also seen those. I've seen field trips also use school buses as well. So that's something that you would need to speak with the LEA about when you're thinking about transportation. You cannot purchase your own bus or a van or anything like that with 21st Century funds. So you're going to have to either use a private service or contract with the LEA. All right, are MOUs required as agreements with local CMP and our transportation department? Can you give examples of other MOU agreements that might be needed? So, let me address CMP first. You will have an agreement with CMP. I don't know if it's called an MOU, to be honest with you. We do not make you upload that. That's not part. We don't ask to see your CMP agreement. We just ask, if you have one, we want you to include it in the grant, but it's not something that we require you to upload. If you do upload it in your MOUs, that's great. We're happy to see it, but it's not something that we require. And then with your transportation, same thing. I guess technically if you're a CBO and you're contracting with an LEA, we would like to see that MOU uploaded because you are spending federal funds because that's a little bit different. The MOUs we want to see when we're doing your grant is we want to see if you're spending money on something, on contracting with something outside of your business or organization or LEA. So if an LEA is using their own school buses, we wouldn't need to see a contract for that. But if you're an MOU and you're paying the LEA to use their school buses, then yes, we would need to see that MOU or that contract. Other things that you can contract, um, you can contract to have professionals come in and do sessions with students. So, for example, I've seen lots of cases where, let's say, one of your enrichment activities is to have a ballet class. You could contract with a local ballet company to come in and offer ballet 2 times a week. You would, of course, it needs to be an actual ballet instructor. That's the kind of thing we look for when we see those types of contracts. We want to make sure that you are contracting with a actual business or a professional, not just like your sister who did ballet when she was in high school and she's real good at it and she can teach the kids. You know what I mean? Like it needs to be an actual professional that you're contracting with and paying to come in and do that. You could contract. I've seen people contract with like a college drumming organization to come in and teach drumming with the kids. Let's see, people to do physical activities. I've seen tennis coach instructors being contracted with. I've seen STEM contracts. You might, if you have a good bit of money, you could reach out. You might contract with a company to come in and do your STEM education with your students. You might contract to have professional development come in or a company to come in and do professional development with your teachers. So anything that you're paying for, that you're using federal funds for, outside of your own organization, you would need to have a contract and that would need to be uploaded. Okay. So I apply for the $10,000 and then the REAP $10,000 and only provide summer transportation. I can use the remaining funds to support my program in other ways. Is that correct? Yes, that is correct. That is correct. On the flip side of that, though, I've talked to some LEAs who currently have grants, and now that they're doing the calculation the new way, they're getting a good bit more money than they're used to having, and they're kind of concerned about whether they can spend that money or not. You don't have to accept those funds. So if you don't feel like you need the entire $20,000 and you're not going to spend them, I would rather you not. Well, you can still ask for them, but when it comes down to the part, so when you're filling out the application, you're going to go through the calculations and it'll say what you're eligible to receive, your total amount that you're eligible for. But then underneath that, it'll ask you the total amount that you're requesting. So you can request less money than what you qualify for if that is your choice. Just understand that if you choose to do that, then in future years, we're not going to be able to add to that money, add it back in the amount that you didn't want. So once you're requesting a lesser amount, you're requesting that lesser amount for 5 years. But I still really encourage you guys to think of ways that you could spend that money outside of what you typically do. One of the reasons why we changed the way the funding is because I read through all these grants and I see that in a lot of cases, 90% of the 21st century funds are going towards paying staff. They're not buying materials and supplies or cool programs for the kids to use. And that's a little bit of a concern to me because one of the great things about 21st century is, yes, we do want you to provide the math and the literacy and the STEM, but it's also an excellent opportunity to provide kids with opportunities to do things that they may not get to do in any other setting. Their parents may not be able to afford for them to have tennis lessons. Their parents may not be able to afford for them to join a dance class after school, or maybe they can afford it, but they don't have anybody to take them to that dance class and sit there with them and bring them home and all of that. So I encourage you, if you have the extra funds, think of ways that you could incorporate enrichment activities into your program that those kids are not going to they may not get to experience otherwise. And use those funds to contract professionals to come in and provide those services to the students. Okay. So it says in past grants, an MOU contract was required for the program director, which is an administrator in our system. Is this still required? Um, I would say no, unless, Alicia, can you expand on why that was a requirement in the past? Because if it's
Sure.
somebody, go ahead.
Sure. So in the past, that was um, a contract needed to be made if the program director served, let's say, as a federal programs director,
Hmm.
and they were part of their job was to um, oversee 21st century funds. And so, the grant requires you to have the program director, but we're not able to see it in the application. Then we may ask them to either upload their contract that shows that that's part of their responsibility, or if the program director understands that they may have to work within a limited amount of money based on that cap, but whoever the entity is, whether it be a CBO or an LEA, they understand that this is the amount of money that we're able to pay. That's it, but we expect for the running of the program to come through. So if there is an agreement between the parties for that under those circumstances, then yes. But if that's not necessary between the two, then no, you don't have to have one. But that was the only time that it was requested for.
Okay. So it's a case by case situation. It's not necessarily a
Yeah,
requirement of the grant.
right.
Okay. Thank you for explaining that.
You're welcome.
Okay. Can additional MOUs be added after the grant is received? Absolutely. So we've talked about this in past RFA office hours. We understand that there's some LEAs, especially, that may not want you to actually create an MOU with a service provider until you actually have received the grant. So we understand that MOUs might be added after the grant has been awarded. In that case, that's fine, but we do ask that all MOUs be uploaded once you have gotten the award. Once we have made the announcement that you have the award, we expect you to have those uploaded within 30 days. We have to still go in and approve your final budget, and we won't approve your budget until all those MOUs have been uploaded. So the longer it takes for you to get that in place, the longer it's going to be before you have access to your funds. Now, if you're doing a summer program, of course your timeline is going to be tighter than if you're not starting your program until the fall. So if you are just doing the summer only program and you can go ahead and get those MOUs uploaded ahead of time, then that's what we would advise you to do. There is a Q&A document that has some suggestions for wording that you could go ahead and put into your MOU that basically says this contract is null and void if we don't get the grant. I mean, that's in layman's terms. Of course, it sounds better than that, but you know, if you added those to your grant, that would be kind of a safety measure for you to go ahead and get those signed. But they understand that if you don't get the grant, or if the grant at some point the funding is reduced, then that MOU would be null and void. Other cases would be, let's say that as part of your program, let's say that you talk about how in the summer you're going to, let's say you're doing a year-long program, and then you have plans that in the spring you're going to do a community garden that your students are going to work on. You probably don't need, and you're going to bring in a professional gardener, you're going to bring in a gardener to help with that community garden. You probably don't need to do an MOU here in February. Well, for next year, because this won't start till next year, right? So there's no reason for you to do an MOU now or this early for something that's not even going to occur for another year. So that's when you can mention in your application that that is your plan. But in the meantime, until you're ready to hire that person, you would need to keep those funds into like your materials and supplies part of your budget. And then when you're ready to hire that person, you would upload an MOU and you would do a budget revision and move those funds over into your into purchase services. Sorry, you would move it over to purchase services and say that you are now paying someone to do that program. You also may intend to do something and you can't find somebody that wants to do that, or you may end up, let's say you have a goal and what you put in your application doesn't work and you want to try something new. You still have the same goal, but you want to try a different program. So you want to hire somebody new, or maybe you had somebody quit halfway through the year and now you need to find a new provider. Anytime that kind of thing happens, you would just do a budget revision, upload the new MOU so that we can know to go check it out and approve it, and then you can go on with your year. So anytime you can definitely upload MOUs throughout the year as needed. Okay, is an MOU required for organizations that we will pay to do an outreach program? Example, the aquarium or museum that will come to our school. If you're paying them, then yes, you would need to do an MOU with them. Again, anytime you spend 21st century funds on anything outside of your organization and you're contracting with services to be provided, then you would need to do an MOU and have that uploaded. Now, if they're coming and they're doing it for free, then no, you wouldn't have to have an MOU for that. You would consider that if you have somebody coming in and providing services for free, then you would consider them one of your community partners and you would put them on that community partner list. Okay, we've got 11 minutes left. So what other questions do you guys have? All right, let's see. Can I explain the difference between the project director and other roles? Okay, so I like to compare it to like a school system. Think of your little 21st century program as a school system, right? Your project director would be sort of like your superintendent. That is the person who is over your entire 21st century program. That's the person that is responsible for budgets, responsible for making sure data has been entered, many other things involved. They have to come to meetings, that sort of thing. That's your project director. And then you have your site coordinators. That's the other required position. You have to have a site coordinator at every different site that you have, every 21st century site you have. So those would be like your principals. Those are the people that are the boots on the ground. They're at the site. They're making sure things run smoothly. They're making sure safety measures are being taken. They're making sure that the kids are behaving and all of that. They're like the principals of the school, but they're the principals of the program, right? They're the site coordinators. So you don't have to have both. If you only have one site, you can just combine that into two roles, but you still may want to consider having both because it's a lot of work. There is a lot of requirements in this grant of things that have to be submitted throughout the year, data that has to be collected, reports that have to be done. And so, even if you have the ability to just have one, you might want to consider, if you do that, you might want to consider also having like a bookkeeper or a data collection person or something like that. In past grants, I know that they had certain required positions that you had to have. Tiffany from Bruman kind of talked me out of having that in this one so that you could be a little bit more inventive and flexible on the administrative positions or the positions that you hire for. So you can hire for what you need, but those two positions are required. You have to have a project director and you have to have site coordinator. Again, unless you just have one site and then you can have one person that does both roles, but that one person does need to be on site and making sure that that the program is running well and the kids are safe and that sort of thing. Other roles that you have, you can create. Just make sure that you have a job description that encompasses all of the duties of that person. And explains why you need them. It needs to list their requirements, all of their duties and roles and responsibilities. And so that we can, when we go in and look at your application, we can see, okay, yeah, that makes sense that they would hire that person. They would pay that person to do that work. So, I've seen, like I said, bookkeepers that I've seen data collection, people who are responsible for the data collection. I can't really think of anything else off the top of my head. Or a finance person that's responsible for like the ES2s, especially for CBOs or FBOs. You might need to have someone that does that. But yeah, I can't think of anything else off the top of my head. But if you can think of other roles and you can justify the need for them, then they will definitely be considered.
I have a
Oh,
comment,
yeah, go
Amanda.
ahead, Alicia.
It just came to my mind while you were talking. This is something for, especially if you are having multiple sites that are going to be under your grant. If you are a CBO especially, and you're coming from a large um, business, and you want to identify using I guess the financial person for your business to also handle the finances for your 21st century grant. I would like for you to suggest that you strongly go by through the RFA, excuse me, and look at all the requirements to see if that person will still be able to meet the deadline dates that are required for 21st Century Grant when it comes to reimbursements, making sure that they'll be able to keep up with not only the paperwork for 21st Century, as well as the paperwork for the business. If that is not the case, that may be a situation where you need to hire someone that specifically addresses only the 21st century's expenditures and making sure the correct paperwork is turned in and is completed correctly, because it is a hardship, especially we've seen it with our CBOs who have multiple sites. So just go through the RFA and just really make sure, will this person be able to handle the regular expenditures for the business itself as well as the expenditures for the 21st century grant, because each one is going to require different documents, and you can easily put a concern or risk or whatever on your on the financial piece of it if you get too far behind on getting your expenditures in. So I just wanted to bring that, even with an LEA, if you know that you have a very large LEA and you have all of the other things that are going on, you may want to have someone that addresses specifically just the 21st century funds.
Perfect. Thank you, Alicia.
You're welcome.
Very good advice. And you can use up to 30% of your grant funds to pay for those administrative positions. And so as long as you don't go over that, then it is fine. But we still want a justification. Just because you can use 30% of the funds for an administrator doesn't mean you have to, right? So it's a red flag to me when I see that a site has, let's say, 5 sites, and every single one of the 5 sites, no matter how big or small their program is paying exactly the 30% out in administrative. They figure out a way to pay their administrative staff exactly the 30%. That's a red flag to me. So you need to, not to say you can't do it, it's just be conscientious about, come up with what you feel is a good hourly pay rate for a position, and then be consistent with that. So if you have a program, let's say that is only, we'll say 300 hours versus a program that has 600 hours, and you have a person at both sites that are working on bookkeeping, you need to have an hourly rate for that bookkeeper. And of course, when we get those expenses, it should show that the bookkeeper that works at the school that is only 200 hours will be making approximately half the amount of the bookkeeper at the school that works the longer amount of hours. And that's probably not a great example, but that's just, I think you could probably, hopefully you get what I'm saying. Come up with a rate of pay for each of those positions and stick with that rate and base it off of the hours of your program. Also, if you have, this is just another thing to throw out there, if you're hiring one, like if you're doing like Alicia said, and you have one bookkeeper that is going to work for 5 different sites, you can pay that one bookkeeper, and you've got 5 different grants, one for each of the sites. You could pay that bookkeeper part of that bookkeeper's salary out of each of the 5 sites, but it needs to still only equal up to one full-time position, right? So you shouldn't pay a bookkeeper 5 times to do that work, from each grant. You shouldn't pay one person to do the job 5 times, like a full-time job 5 times. I hope I'm getting it. I hope what I'm saying, I hope I'm explaining this well. So let's say you have an 8-hour position as your bookkeeper and you've got 5 sites. And so basically you'd be paying like a little over an hour worth of their salary from each of the 5 sites, to give them a full-time position.
Yeah, I think that's
Does
it
that
for me.
make sense? Okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
because I
I
think
ramble.
yeah, no, I think sometimes when we see the amount of money for each one, we think
Yeah.
that we can just spread that love, but we got to be good stewards with the money and just
Yeah.
make sure that if I'm going to be over all 5 sites, is it going to take me 5 hours for each of those sites? You have to think about it like that each day. And so then it presents itself to be a flag to us to begin to dig deeper as to the rationale for doing that. So just kind of keep that in mind. But you did good. That was good.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Someone asked if there was an approved external list of evaluators, and Erica has already responded to that in the chat, and she put a link to that list. So thank you, Erica, for doing that. And she also explained that they're just suggestions of evaluators that we know of. You can bring in another external evaluator. However, if you we have had situations where external evaluators will find out you have a program and they'll come to you and approach you. If someone approaches you and they're not on that external evaluation list, I would highly suggest that you contact Erica at TPI and just run that name past her, because we do have a list of people that we don't want used anymore. Either they haven't done a good job in the past. There's been situations where people have been paid to do the evaluation towards the beginning of the year, and then they ghosted the site and never completed the work. So just make sure that if they're not on that list and you want to use them, that you check with Erica just to make sure they're not on our, I guess for lack of a better term, our blacklist of evaluators, of people that we would not suggest that you use, that we would not want you to use. Okay. So this says, for example, the program director needing the resume. So the only resume that we do ask for is for the program director. We would like you to upload that. And that's because there's just so much responsibility that comes with that position. We want to make sure that you are hiring someone who is qualified to do the work. That's going to be probably your most important person that you hire. And you should go ahead and have a plan of who that person is going to be. In the past, we've seen situations where somebody wrote a fantastic grant but didn't have anybody necessarily in mind for the positions. They get the grant and then they're scrambling to find someone to fill that role, and it just causes issues and problems, because maybe they can't find someone to fill the role, and then they end up hiring somebody who's really not qualified for that role. And when that happens, the program does not run well, and it's just one issue after another after another. And so that's why we do want you to go ahead and have someone in mind for that role, and have their resume submitted when you submit your application, just so that we can see that, yes, we have really put into thought who could do this position and do it well. And so we can just check and make sure that they do have qualifications for the position. Okay. Does the CBO have to have a physical location as a requirement? For example, if a company outsources tutors but does not have a physical location, can they still be considered to be a CBO? So, yes, you can, but you need to make sure that you have a place to have your 21st century program. Um, I would assume that that CBO would probably be working with a local school system to have the program inside of a school building. Um, Typically, that's what tends to happen. So as long as there's going to be a physical place that is that meets the requirements to to house those students, then that is fine. Um, I know there's been situations where we've had CBOs that they do rent some sort of office space to for example, for their program director to work in, and you can charge that to the grant if that's the case, but that would be considered an administrative cost that would come out of your 30%. So that has not been enforced in the past, but it will be enforced in the future. So keep in mind that if you're charging the grant for administrative office rental or any kind of administrative cost to administer the grant, then you can you can use the grant to pay for that, but it would go towards your 30% administrative costs along with the cost of your employees, and so you need to make sure that you can afford to do that. Also, we would want to make sure that you really are a legitimate company that is starting this program. So you just make sure that when you're doing your application, that when you're doing the portions of the application that ask about your qualifications to run a program like this, any experience you have that your company has in doing this sort of thing in the past, make sure that you explain um, how, how it's going to work and your past experiences in running programs like this. Okay, I'm going to have to finish very soon, so I'm going to answer these last few questions as quickly as I can because I have to go. For the transportation plan, do we include the plan from the district or just the site transportation plan? You would do the site transportation plan. So how is it that you plan to get the kids at that particular site? Because you do an application for each site that you have, unless you're combining two sites into one, unless you have two physical locations that are considered one site. Again, I've already talked about this in past cohorts. I recommend you not doing that unless you absolutely have to. But it would be you're going to fill out an application for each of your different sites. And so it would be the transportation plan we're asking for is your site transportation plan. How are you going to get those kids at that particular school or that particular 21st century program to and from the program, either after school or during the summer? Will there be an external evaluation training date for new evaluators prior to the summer program? We will have to discuss that. Thank you for answering that, Erica. Yeah, we'll have to figure out that is a great question, and we will have to figure out what we're going to do for evaluation for just summer only programs. That's a fantastic question that I hadn't even thought about. So yeah, that's a very good question. So we'll be thinking about that and try to address it in the next meeting. Probably won't be Monday's meeting. Monday we're going to focus on EGAP, but the next office hours we'll try to have an answer to that for you. As federal programs director, my district requires me to be the responsible program director. We have a need and the opportunity for a former experienced site director to be hired as the data collector and submitter to take this responsibility of the site coordinator. Would this have to be an hourly rate, or could we do a contract, for example, say $2,000 a year to do the work? Yes, either one is fine. So if you're so first of all, I'm assuming that's a typo. You're taking the responsibility off the site coordinator. You're still going to have a site coordinator, right, at the site that will do other things, but they're just not going to be responsible for data collection. That is perfectly fine if you want to hire somebody to come in and help with that data. And you can do it either way. As long as you have an MOU, you could pay them an hourly rate, or you could pay them a lump sum. You would just need to have that explained, how that's going to work explained in your MOU. All right, I'm so sorry that I have to end this now. But if you have other questions that come up, please feel free to email us. We'll be happy to answer them. And hopefully we will see you all on Monday at the EGAP training. If anything happens that delays the EGAP opening up on Monday as we expect it to, we will be sure to send that communication out. If there is a delay, I wouldn't expect it to be more than a day or two, but hopefully there will not be any delays and we will be good to go for Monday. That's the way it is looking, so it shouldn't be a problem. But anyway, feel free to email me if you have other questions. I'm going to go ahead and end the session now. And we have recorded this, and so well, I thought I recorded it. Oh yeah, I did. Okay, I'm going to end that now, and we're going to end today's meeting. But